We are back for episode number 3. You excited?
Yes, I am. Oh, still getting used to this mic.
I am back with a mic as well, so everyone can hear me clearly now.
Yay!
Thank you for, bringing us this new show and introducing us to all these new concepts and topics that you teach us about. Do you want to bring us into the current moment, maybe like you did in episode 1?
Sure, of course. So let's begin, guys. Welcome back to Align with Soulitude. If you're here, I'd like to invite you to pause and land in this moment with me. So let's take a deep breath together. When you're ready, bring your eyes to a close and take an inhalation. And exhale. Amazing. This is your space to slow down, reflect, and remember the deeper truths that lie beneath the surface of life. Today's topic is one that's often overlooked, but it holds real weight when seen through a spiritual lens. And that topic is the hidden cost of cutting corners. We're going to get straight into it. My amazing friend and co-host has compiled some amazing questions, so I'm really excited. Let's begin.
I'm glad that you've kind of picked this topic today because I feel like in this generation, it's something that's overlooked, as you said, by a lot of people.
Yeah.
And it's definitely something that people do need to pay a lot more attention to. But before we do get into question 1, I just wanted to ask you why you think it might be overlooked in this day and age.
I feel like everyone is always in a rush, to get from A to B. And I just think that it comes as a result of the busyness of life. That's how I came to discover the hidden costs of cutting these corners and how it affects us and how it affects our internal journey.
I couldn't agree more with you, especially in terms of what you're speaking about this day and age and about how everyone's so busy. So I think that really perfectly leads on to question number 1. Where do you think the urge to cut corners really comes from?
Personally, for me, I've found that the urge to cut corners comes from the illusion of separation. So to explain that a bit more, I remember once I rushed an online platform into existence. I was literally convinced that I'd crack the code by observing every little trending topic or studying the algorithm and every shortcut. I was cutting corners, skipping audience research, overlooking my own values to hustle it to this invisible finish line. But it was the moments after that I'd launched where stagnation really hit hard. The platform just felt empty, like it was a shell of someone else's blueprint. It just didn't feel authentic. And I think that my fear of missing out on success had really blinded me to the truth that shortcuts can't compensate for our soul alignment. Do you know what? It's interesting, guys, because I actually found that the lack of fulfillment wasn't just in the project. It echoed in how small I'd made myself to fit into these trends. And only when things began to unravel did I actually see the cost of me cutting those corners. And cutting corners wasn't efficiency for me. It was, in fact, self-abandonment. It was at this point that I decided to go into reflection and realized that something had to change. So I started rebuilding slowly. I began rooting myself in purpose. That taught me that, we start to connect only when we stop chasing the things that we're too afraid to face. With cutting corners, it's wild how often it can stem from this illusion that success is some tangible price out there. like something to grab, right? Instead of this intangible truth we're meant to nurture from within. And yet when we actually slow down and stay true to ourselves and move with patience and quiet purpose, that's when real fulfillment starts to take root. Not in the hollow shortcuts that, let's be honest, never really align with who we are. So cutting corners can seem harmless, just a way to be more efficient, right? But often it comes from something deeper. And for me, it was the fear of not having enough time and not being good enough or needing to get ahead.
And from everything that you've said about your journey with, handling cutting corners and it coming back to you later, I feel like it's a journey that not just you, that everyone has to go through before they can understand why they should be doing things, the proper way instead of cutting corners and finding a shortcut. Which leads us on to question number 2. Spiritually speaking, what are the consequences of cutting corners even if no one else notices it?
So I guess the consequences involve things like karma, energy, and integrity. I don't know if you guys have heard this line from Buddhism. It's called karma vipaka, which translates to the ripening of action, and that every choice plants a seed. And when we skip steps or compromise the energy we put out, it can echo in ways that we don't expect.
So from your own perspective, what has this taught you about alignment and energetic consequences?
Oh, I like that. Okay, so I'm going to share a bit of my personal experience, and then we'll go into a few of the consequences. So there was this one phase where I remember work had really begun to pile up for me, and even my personal affairs were all left unaddressed, and I felt completely overstretched. There was literally no space to breathe, and I had no room to think. It's interesting how cyclical it all is. There'll be stillness one moment with no urgent matters, and then everything just shows up all at once. I'm sure you guys can relate to that.
I feel like a lot of people watching can relate to that, definitely.
It's just, literally cyclical, like I said. And these times always make me feel like it's an initiation where the universe sends a storm to see if, we're really rooted. So not long ago, I told myself I'll just skip meditation today. And I thought to myself, what's 20 minutes when I'm drowning in so many things to do? And here we have it, the classic scarcity mindset, right? It was like time was the shrinking resource that I had to hoard. And it was by midweek that I was a complete mess. I was withdrawn from my partner. I found myself zoning out during all my day-to-day engagements. Even my morning matcha didn't hit the same. If you know, you know. I didn't connect the dots until my mum called me. Bless her, she's forever checking in on me. So yeah, she said, you seem off. Is everything okay with you? And do you know what? That's when it hit me. That skipping meditation wasn't saving time. It was stealing quality from every other hour. My anxiety had this ripple effect. It wasn't just my energy that was being drained. It was leaking into everyone around me. Karma is funny that way. Some may perceive it as some cosmic punishment, but it's not. It's just cause and effect. And with me, I'd neglected my inner anchor, and the chaos began to multiply. By now, guys, I wouldn't stop there. So I kept going. I was like, I need to get to the bottom of this. I need to fix this, or I need to heal this. So I decided to recommit. And from that space, I worked on surrendering the grip of control and perfection, and instead embraced intention. For me, it's an understanding that the chaos didn't disappear, but how I moved through it did. Now, no matter what, or like, no matter how hectic the day gets, I make sure to carve time out to sit for 20 minutes, either with my eyes closed, chanting a mantra, or eyes open, whilst maintaining stillness from within and just allowing the breath to lead. And it's from this place. And it's from this space that slowly the fog begins to lift. So you see, guys, it turns out grounding isn't a luxury. It's maintenance for the soul. For me, when I honor that, the energy that I bring to the world shifts from being unrooted to then fertile.
This all goes back to a saying that you say a lot, Hems, which is you shouldn't give in to short-term gratification because it will come back to bite you in the long run.
Yeah.
And question number 3, which is, how does cutting corners affect our relationship with integrity and self-trust?
Many of us see integrity as this lofty ideal, but in practice, it's about the small daily choices that reflect who we're becoming.
So do you feel cutting corners ever disconnected you from your inner truth? And how did you begin restoring that alignment? Maybe you could talk about a time that your actions didn't reflect your truth. And what was the cost emotionally or spiritually? What does integrity feel like in your body now? And how do you tune into it?
Okay, sorry guys. It's very hot in here today. Okay, so a time when my actions didn't reflect my truth. Oh yeah. I had a collaboration that looked perfect on paper, visibility, very promising, and it just checked all the boxes at first. But with every meeting, my gut was screaming something. Things just felt misaligned, and me being me ignored that feeling, and I decided to prioritize external validation over my values. And it was later that this project ended abruptly. And what made it so much worse was that I was left feeling like a stranger to myself. So, repairing that disconnect meant that I had to start small. It's crazy because I remember the first time that I started declining like similar offers. That was definitely a scary place to be in, especially as someone who really struggled with upholding my personal boundaries. Wow, thinking back on this one, I've certainly come a long way. Also, I started journaling. This helped me untangle my why, and I began trusting that integrity isn't a grand gesture. It's choosing honesty in tiny daily ways until your outer life mirrors your inner world. Or, as I like to say, your inner compass. And so over time, those small choices have allowed me to build trust within myself again. I stopped needing everything to look right and started asking, does this feel right? And so now alignment isn't just a concept for me. It's a daily practice. It's the confidence that comes from living in integrity, even when no one's watching. Because when your actions reflect your truth, that's when your life really starts to flow. And that feeling, that's freedom.
There's a lot of, changes that you've had to go through and changes you've had to make in your own personal life just to, avoid cutting corners and be a better person, like you said. And just one thing I always wanted to say while you were talking, I just didn't want to cut you off. It's always trust your gut. If you ever get a bad feeling about anyone, it took me quite a while to learn this myself. So it's kind of ironic that I'm saying this to you, but always trust your gut. Because if you get a bad feeling, 9 times out of 10, you will have a bad experience. That's what I can tell from personal experience. And in terms of the journaling, from personal experience, I can say journaling will help you a lot. So if there's anyone that's watching right now that's struggling with anything in terms of mental health or aligning themselves with a higher power, start journaling, because it will honestly help you a lot more than you realize. And another thing that you mentioned were the small wins. Once you did realize that you needed to make a change, you concentrated on the small changes that you made and made sure that you paid more attention to the small wins, because that will help you get to the bigger goal. So this comes to question number 4. Why is patience such a key spiritual lesson, and how does rushing block growth?
So many traditions revere to patience as a virtue. And I once came across, I think it's in Taoism, which speaks of, I don't know if you're familiar with Wu Wei, which is flowing with the natural order. But in a world obsessed with speed, it's not easy, is it?
It's definitely not easy. Like we mentioned on question 1, the speed that the world is moving at, it's very hard to slow down and take your time with things. What has your journey taught you about the value of slowing down, even when it feels uncomfortable or uncertain? Maybe you could reflect on a time when the longer path was actually the right one. How has your spiritual path invited you to surrender into divine timing, especially during moments of fear or grief?
It's taken me a lot of time, or years actually, to understand that rushing isn't just about speed. It's often about fear. The fear of sitting with discomfort, and the fear that if I don't act quickly, I'm going to fall behind, or, as a lot of you might be familiar with, FOMO, the fear of missing out. Fear pulls us out of rhythm, but the soul flows with trust and timing. And I've realized over and over again that when I push against the current, I bring on suffering. But when I pause, ground, and surrender, life often meets me in the stillness. The thing is, it's not always easy, especially in a world that glorifies quick results. Slowing down has shown me that transformation doesn't need speed. It needs space. And often it's the waiting where the deepest shifts begin to take root. Honestly, there were times in my journey when I tried to force healing. I wanted to get through things faster and to just skip over all of the rawness. But I kept being brought back to the same karmic loops and cycles. And this went on, until I was willing to sit with them fully. Patience taught me to stop pushing against the very path that was shaping me. Okay, I'd like to touch upon the wisdom of slowness. I remember reflecting on when the longer path became the right one. So following an unexpected loss.
So if any of you guys have not seen episode 1 or 2, I would love for you guys to check that episode out, as she gets more into this in that episode. But back to you, Hamali.
Thank you. So it was during that time that I tried to fix my grief by rushing into new projects and trying to numb the pain with productivity. But that pace became a quiet form of self-abandonment. I was stuck in a cycle that drained me more than it healed me. It took me a great deal of time and truth to recognize that our healing doesn't follow a timeline. It was when I allowed myself to surrender to the slow, non-linear process and let my grief rise and retreat like tides that really taught me, growth isn't about speed. It's about showing up even when the path is unclear. That's where real alchemy begins. Today's slowness to me is a sacred space to be in. Wow, sorry guys, I feel like I've gone on one. So let's conclude. Now I don't view slowness as stagnation. To me, it's devotion, it's trust, it's presence. And as for patience, patience is a a sacred practice, a way of showing love to the parts of me that are still unfolding. You know how they say the seeds planted in patience always root deeper?
It is very true what you're saying, and I'm sure everyone's experienced it at least once in their life, where the universe, like you said in episode 1, has its divine timing. You can't force anything, and you just have to be patient and just keep, going at it every day, even when you don't see progress, like you said. And when the universe decides the time is right for you to experience this, it will make space for you, like you said. So this leads us on to question number 5 quite perfectly. Is there a sacredness in doing things thoroughly, even if nobody sees it?
Yes. Some of the most powerful work we do is invisible. So in Hinduism, there's karma yoga, offering our actions as service or prayer.
Have you ever found yourself returning to that level of devotion in the details? And if so, what's changed for you when you approach even the small things with presence?
So some of the things I've really come to appreciate on my path are the unseen efforts and the unshakable devotion we bring to what feels small. I just want to touch a little bit on the unseen efforts, because there was a point where I was very, very hard on myself because I would compare myself to other people who would showcase, their spiritual journey and their path. I've always kept more to myself. And it was through that process that I actually learned to give myself credit where it was due for those unseen efforts. It's not always about making a big show or performance, like I've mentioned before. Also just to go into a situation from my past, I would measure my value by visibility. So if no one saw it, I would ask myself, did it even matter? But over time, especially through motherhood and my healing journey and holding space, I've realized the most transformative energy is often the most subtle. It's the intention behind the action that holds the power. I remember during lockdown, I began handwriting letters to my daughter. There wasn't for any specific reason, just to be present. And honestly, at first, I really questioned myself, what's the point? Will these hold any value? What I was overlooking was that these letters had actually become a form of meditation for me. To put thought behind each word, it really allowed me to slow down, and it brought me into devotion. And now I see just how those small rituals mirror how I move through everything. Whether I'm editing a piece of writing or holding space in a session, or even just simply cooking a dinner for the family, when I show up fully, the ordinary becomes sacred. And sometimes it's the things that no one sees that shape us the most.
I guess what you are trying to say is that we're all on our own journey, and you really can't rush it, because as you've mentioned to us before, the universe has its divine timing, which you cannot rush.
Yeah.
And when the universe decides the time is right for you, everything, will flow. And you just have to be patient, and you can't really force anything in life. And I'm sure a lot of people have experienced this throughout their lifetime, whether they've come to terms with it or not. Maybe after watching this episode, they'll realize a lot of things. But we are slowly and unfortunately arriving at the end of this episode. So would you, Hamali, like to give us some closing reflections maybe?
Of course. It's been a pleasure as always. Thank you so much. So as we close this space, I'm going to leave you with these reflections. Am I rushing to escape discomfort, or am I ready to move through it with presence? And what kind of energy do I want to carry and pass on in the things I create, say, or share? Cutting corners isn't always wrong, but when we pause, reflect, and choose integrity, we honor not just the outcome, but the soul who's walking the path. If this episode resonated with you, I'd love to hear from you. Drop your reflections or questions in the comments below. I'll be replying to as many of you as I can. And if you feel called to support, make sure to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to hit that bell icon so you can stay updated on all future episodes. Until next time, guys, trust your path, honor your process, and keep aligning with Soulitude.